how does a leader determine the need of anyone? By having a conversation, talking, getting
Mm.
to know each other, dialogue. And that part is very, very important. People don't always know what they need, but people do sometimes know what they need. And when they articulate that and share it, then as a leader, we have a responsibility to see what we can do to meet them at that particular area of need. So I'm in total agreement with you and some of the other leaders that you've had a conversation with. There's no one approach to how we go about leading anyone.
Mhm.
You might have 8 different people on your team, and guess what? You probably have to interact 8 different ways with each people on the team because everyone's different and everyone's unique. Now, when we respect that uniqueness and when we respect that difference, I believe we're on our way to having a much better team and a much better organization because people feel heard, people's opinions are valued, and they walk away with the sense that their contributions matter to what we're trying to get done.
We've curated a vast network of business experts ready to address your company's most pressing challenges. From corporate growth strategy to leadership, marketing strategy, sales strategy, branding, customer relations, technology, AI, IT security, and beyond, we connect you to the best experts for your needs. Reach out to us for more information or schedule a call at grownlearn.org to explore how we can support you. I'm speaking today to the CEO of the Johnson Leadership Group LLC, Mr. Kevin Wayne Johnson. He's been in leadership for quite some years. He's been co-author of 20 books, more than 20 books on leadership, and is a real voice in the industry. So I'm welcoming Kevin today.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for the invitation. Happy to be here.
Glad to have you, Kevin. Kevin, what shall we start with? What drove you into this subject of leadership? Tell us a bit about your story. Why did you
Yeah.
land in this sphere?
So I'll tell you very briefly about the personal story and the professional story. So on the personal side, I have one sibling, a younger brother, no sisters, and his name is Eric, and he was born when I was 3.5 years old with a mental disability. And my dad worked in the United States Armed Services in the U.S. Marine Corps, so he was often away fighting in wars. And I was at home as a little boy helping my mom to raise my mentally disabled brother. It taught me a lot about negotiation, advocacy, support service, love, and leadership at a very, very young age. Fast forward many years later, I finish high school, I finish college, I meet this young lady, we fall in love, we get married, and from our union, we have 3 sons. The youngest son, at the age of 2, is diagnosed with autism. So here we go again. I have to negotiate, I have to advocate for, I have to serve, support, love, and lead this little boy and bring him up to be a fruitful and productive citizen as an adult. So I learned a lot about leadership at home, and I was able to take it out into the marketplace in my career. So right after college, I started my government career with the federal government here in the United States. And I did not know I was going to stay as long as I would, but I stayed 34 years. And I had an opportunity to serve as a frontline, mid-level, and senior level leader. And here's the story. It's really interesting to watch how people respond when they're under good leadership. And it's equally interesting to watch how people respond when they're under bad leadership. And so once I retired, and that was 7 years ago, I started my company, the Johnson Leadership Group, and we focus on providing good leadership practices, tools and tips, strategies and principles to help all of our leaders who are leading people to be the good leaders, because we believe that good leaders help to make the world a much better place. So that's both my personal and my professional story.
Interesting. What kind? I mean, yeah, I'm curious to dig in more. But what part of government did you work for?
In the federal government, I worked for the Department of Defense. That's where I entered into right out of college. I stayed for about 10 or 11 years, and then I translated to the Department of Treasury. I stayed there for 10 years, and then I came back home my last 14 years with the Department of Defense. And it was a spectacular career. I had a chance to travel all over the world. I really, really enjoyed it. But after 34 years, you kind of know it's time to move on to the next phase. And so I retired back in 2017. But it was a great journey, a great experience, and a great process.
Uh-huh. And the 20 books that you wrote, did you write them after you stopped working there, when you started your own business, or did you start writing them already in parallel?
Yeah, in parallel. I began writing 23 years ago on different topics of faith, topics of finance, blended families, book marketing. There's a lot of different topics that I wrote about. And then here recently, within the last 5 years, specifically in the area of leadership. So I am a principal author, and I'm also a contributing author. So I get a number of phone calls from different people who are putting a book together, and they're looking for different authors to submit their story to that book.
Yeah.
I do quite a bit of that as well as a part of my professional network. And I really, really enjoy writing. I enjoy promoting literacy and making sure that people around the globe really have their hands on some really good books that would educate them and enlighten them as well.
Let's talk about the subject in question now, leadership. You mentioned that you can very easily recognize a leader by the way people react. Is this your first sign of a leader, or do you look at the person, or what are the signs actually that you're reading?
Well, it's kind of interesting in terms of human behavior and the human element and how we communicate. We just don't communicate with each other based upon the words we say. But more times than not, it's the how we say it, and also the body language and the facial expressions speak really, really loud, sometimes louder than the actual word. And you can sort of read whether a person is fulfilled, they're joyful, they're glad, they're happy. And you can also tell when a person is not so fulfilled and not so happy and not so joyful. You can kind of sense there's something going on with their posture, their eye contact or lack thereof, and how they kind of carry themselves. And these are languages in terms of how people communicate. So it's not always the words that we say, but oftentimes it's the nonverbal, and we're giving cues. And these cues let us know if we're communicating or if we're not. Are we connecting? Are we building bridges? Are we finding common ground, or we are not? So that comes from years of experience. I can pretty much look at a person and I can tell what mood they might be in, but that just comes from years of experience.
Years of experience distilled in a certain principle that you can guide people through? Or how do your books work in your coaching? I suppose that you've distilled these years in some sort of an applicable way for your clients. What do you teach them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we teach a number of different tools that formulate what leadership is all about. So leadership is about leading people. So we have to motivate, we have to inspire, we have to encourage. We also have to remember that as a leader, we are a role model and we are an example. So oftentimes we set the tone by what we do because people are actually watching. So those are some of the tips that we also talk about and teach and share and train. Not to mention, how do you handle conflict? So conflict management, understanding your personality style, and how does that lend into leading yourself, leading teams, and leading organizations. We talk about influence. We talk about growth. Of course, I've already mentioned it, but the big one really is communication, because we can talk, but communication gets into connecting with other people and finding common ground and being able to build bridges one with another. If we're not doing that, we're not really communicating, we're just talking. And there's also a number of different assessments that we use as well to complement helping people to be better leaders. I mentioned the personality, but there's a leadership self-assessment, and there's the leadership 360, and there's the disc around the behaviors, and I could go on and on and on, but oftentimes these different assessments complement what we learn on our leadership journey. So we cover all of that in the training as well as in the books as well, because we're trying to do two things. Number one, we want to educate, and equally important, we want to heighten the level of awareness when it comes to being a good leader. Again, I always say it, good leaders, I believe, help to make the world a much better place. And everybody that I talk to wants to live in a much better world where people talk to one another. We don't always get along. That's okay. We have differences of opinion. But guess what? We can agree to disagree and continue to work together and resolve problems and make decisions. I firmly believe that. I've seen it happen. So that kind of gives you a glimpse into some of what we share in the books and some of what we share in the training sessions as well.
Mm-hmm. I do want to ask you, Kevin, a bit more in detail about certain leadership, not an entire training, but like processes or the journey you take them through in order to unlock this leadership. But before that, I have actually a even more important, at least to me, question. I've spoken to quite a few executive leadership coaches and strategy coaches and people in close contact with leadership, including also people who have worked in various areas of US government, various even military functions. And some of them are proponents of the nature aspect of leadership. So when we talk about nature versus nurture, they believe that there's very little one can do in order to build a leader. Rather, they come with their own upbringing and, so say, leadership skill already built, and there's not much one can refine. What is your opinion on that?
Well, in part, I agree with that. I'm sort of nodding my head up and down because everyone really is different. There's no cookie cutter approach to leadership. Everybody's different.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of us sees the world through our own lens. And you brought up a great point. It has a lot to do with our upbringing. So, we've grown up or worked or lived in different geographical regions around the world. We have different levels of education. We have different levels or years of work experience. A person that grew up in a large family and has 8 or 9 siblings reacts much differently than the only child because of their unique experiences. We were raised by different parents. I mean, I could go on and on and on. All of this encompasses who we are individually and uniquely. So I'm a firm believer in that. We don't nurture per se, because nurture kind of gets almost into like babysitting.
Yeah.
But we do support and we develop and we provide resources based upon their need. So how does a leader determine the need of anyone? By having a conversation, talking, getting to know each other, dialogue. And that part is very, very important. People don't always know what they need, but people do sometimes know what they need. And when they articulate that and share it, then as a leader, we have a responsibility to see what we can do to meet them at that particular area of need. So I'm in total agreement with you and some of the other leaders that you've had a conversation with. There's no one approach to how we go about leading anyone. You might have 8 different people on your team, and guess what? You probably have to interact 8 different ways with each people on the team because everyone's different and everyone's unique. Now, when we respect that uniqueness and when we respect that difference, I believe we're on our way to having a much better team and a much better organization because people feel heard, people's opinions are valued, and they walk away with the sense that their contributions matter to what we're trying to get done. So I'm a firm believer in that. I'm not saying it's easy because we're dealing with people. So I'm not saying it's easy, but it's definitely doable.
Mm-hmm. When you get hired by, let's assume an executive team to train somebody, let's say the level below, I guess, does this happen, or do they hire you to train them? What is the normal scenario? So I can ask my question.
Yeah, well, it's a combination of both. And this is part of the preliminary discussions that we have when the Johnson Leadership Group is contacted by any given government agency, corporation, church, nonprofit, or academic institution. I take the time to ask, just like the conversation that you and I are having right now. What is it that you're looking for? What's the desired outcome? What is the need? How are things working right now? What do you think are the biggest obstacles that we need to overcome? And so it's a combination of maybe having a training session or talk with the frontline leaders, those that are relatively new, in addition to the mid-level leaders, those that have been doing it for maybe 10, 15 years, as well as the senior team, because even though they're senior leaders, there's always something new to learn. And now that we have 5 generations of people in the workforce at the same time, and everyone's so different, here are some additional tools and tips that we can learn together. And then when it's all said and done, I propose that all of us now come together in the room at the same time and have some time together, whether it's a half a day or a full day, so that we can now hear from the different groups what's pressing you, what's working, what's not working, what's annoying, what's very fulfilling, so that we can all hear the same thing in the room at the same time and walk through some of these discussions. We also introduce exercises where we have individual exercises and group exercises where we mix people up that have different levels of education, different levels or years of work experience that might work in different departments, have a different work role. We put them all together in the mixing bowl and we work it out together. And sometimes that works. So it's a combination of all of the above. We try to get leaders and organizations as best we can to think differently, because we're in a different world. We're driven by technology, but you can't forget the human element. You can't forget that workers are people, even though we're in a very, very advanced technological time. You have to stay laser focused on the needs of the people. Everyone wants to be developed. Everyone wants their fair opportunity to get access to resources and to different training programs. People want the opportunity to take on an assignment at the next level of responsibility. People want to be heard. They want to know that their opinion counts. And they want to know that their contributions to the team and to the organization are making a difference. People want that. That's a basic human want in the midst of all the technology that's kind of driving us, and leaders can't forget that.
Yeah. I mean, it's forever been the fact that the qualities that make a leader are actually the soft skills, the human skills, emotional intelligence, communication, everything that you mentioned until now. What if a leader, though, has been promoted despite them lacking this. Let's say they were very pushy, they managed to achieve tremendous sales, and they were promoted because of their or maybe they were a technical person. They were not able to communicate, but because of a certain skill that was functional, they were promoted, and now they find themselves at a leadership position. What do you do in such a situation? How do you train them?
Uh-oh. When that happens, so we kind of have to backtrack. And first and foremost, for those men and women in that category, I always congratulate them first and foremost. Here's the positivity. Congratulations, great work. Your subject matter expertise has clearly proven that you know this role and you can get it done. Now, in your new role, you are responsible for taking care of the people who are here to get the work done. So we have to shift the emphasis and help them to understand the why. If we don't do that, it's going to be hard to break through, because there's a transition that's taking place. There's a change, and we're not very open and receptive to change. That's just part of who we are. But if we help that leader to understand the why in their new role, we're well on our way now to being able to get them to think differently and take care of these people now that you are entrusted to lead. You've got to share information and make sure you share it fairly and equitably. Don't share information with some and leave the others out, because they're going to find out that their colleagues got information that they didn't get, and that's not going to be a good outcome. But sharing information, providing resources, developing people, getting them to the training they need, and making sure that you become a good listener. And all of that is a process. All of that takes time. We can't assume that people know how to be a good listener, because we don't get much training on the topic. So helping that leader to understand the dynamics around this new role. Okay, you were promoted because you were the subject matter expert. You brought that acumen. You were able to get it done, and you did it in an excellent way. But now you're responsible for people. And these people need you. They need you to develop them, to show them, to give them guidance, to give them instructions, and to make sure that they understand what they're doing so they can be excellent like you were, and one day get promoted as well. Having that conversation, walking through that process, in some instances may only take a few weeks. In other instances, it may take a few months. And in some instances, it takes over a year. It's going to depend on the person.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can get them to that point, then we're well on our way. If we don't, it probably will not be much fun for the persons that are under his or her leadership.
Mm-hmm. Can we assume that the psychology of the person can be changed, though, because it takes a certain level of also inbuilt emotional intelligence and also listening skills? Yeah, you can force yourself to a certain degree and you can pay attention. Maybe you can retrain yourself, but can you really embody this character of empathic listening and understanding and working for the team?
Yeah, I believe so, but it takes patience. And again, one more time, the key is helping people understand.
Yeah.
Whenever there's a change, when there's a transition, something different is taking place. We're going on a different trajectory. Helping them to understand that why. Why is this happening? Why are you asking me to do this? Why do you need me to make a change in my role just because I'm in this position? That's really the foundation. If we can get there, then yeah, just about anybody will eventually make the change, even if they disagree, because they understand.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think back on your life, and I certainly, when I think back on my life, there have been many instances where I was in total disagreement with the decision that was made, but the leader took the time to explain why. And I did not agree with it, but because I understood why, I went along with it, and we were able to maintain the relationship and continue to work together. Other instances where the leader didn't think that he or she had any obligation to share why, I'm the leader, this is what I said, this is what I want you to do. In those instances, we disagree, and it ended up ruining the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So it does make a difference. People can turn around, I believe, but it does take patience, because everyone is not necessarily going to be able to understand and get it right away. It may take months, might take years.
Mm-hmm. You work with different types of organizations, and is there a difference of the leadership requirement between those different types?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
non-profit. Yeah, tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. So,
Mhm.
so in these different organizations, the pace at which things are done are much different, whether it's solving a problem, making a decision, looking strategically, thinking more tactically. On the government side, and I can speak to this because this is where I come from, it's more about compliance. Those of us that work for the federal government here in the United States of America, our president signs off on executive orders, and those executive orders then come down to the various departments and agencies for us to comply with. And the world is more of a compliance mindset. And corporations, and this is across the globe, not just in the United States, it's about generating revenue for corporations. They generate revenue. Some of these companies are on the stock market. Many of them have to report every quarter their earnings publicly, and the chief executive officer's job is on the line, or perhaps not, but it's very public in terms of the dollars that were generated and making a profit. And so the pace is much faster. And people are a little bit more on edge to make sure that we do everything we can do to generate the revenue for the company. Nonprofits, it's quite the contrary. In the nonprofit world, it's about having great relationships in the community with those individuals that have deep pockets that can make donations, charitable contributions toward the revenues that these nonprofits need to raise on a regular basis so that they can sustain their operations. And so even that pace is a little bit different. And so what we have to do is slightly modify our curriculum and slightly modify what we teach and what we share, depending on which audience we're in front of, because it's going to be different. It's probably going to be a little bit more conflict resolution conversations in the corporate space than there would be on the government side, but not necessarily. And that's why we take the time to talk to them, to ask them in advance, what is it that you're looking to get out of this? What are your goals? What are your objectives? And we do our best to meet those, whether we're with them for half a day, a full day, or a whole week, or whatever it might be. So we have to be flexible, and we have to modify depending on the audience.
Mm-hmm. I see. Now there are quite a few changes happening, not only since AI, but also the economy. So some statistics say it's not doing so well in the US, but some statistics point exactly to, some say it is doing well, but the majority actually point to the opposite. What is the sentiment amongst leaders that you're speaking to in recent months, and what are they most concerned about?
Well, the biggest concern right now is how we're getting back on our feet post-pandemic, quite frankly. Now, I know it's 2024, and the pandemic, by and large, really ended 2022, but many of us are still being extremely careful and extremely cautious, and we should. Employees in the United States of America were able to demonstrate very clearly that working at home can be just as productive, just as fruitful, and we can perform at a level just as high as we did when we had to come into the office. And guess what? I got to spend more time with my children, more time with my spouse, less gas for the car, less time sitting in traffic on the highways, less maintenance for my car. It was very, very peaceful and very, very enjoyable. I loved the experience. Why do I have to go back into the office now? That's the big thing, because you have attorneys, you have union officials, you have human resource professionals, all involved in all of these conversations around what should we do, and what's going to drive it. I don't know. It's a big question, because we have so much commercial real estate that's vacant,
Right.
but someone still has to pay. So I don't know what the ultimate outcome is going to be. And so here's the big question from a leadership perspective, given that backdrop: how do I best lead these people who are working at home while I also have some of my members coming into the office? And how does it make people feel who are coming into the office as it relates to those who are working at home? And so that's the big dilemma right now in the United States, is how do I best lead my teams and my organizations when everyone's not here that I can actually physically see to lead? So that's the big one. I don't know how much longer it's going to take for someone to make a definitive decision on whether or not you have to come back into the office or you can just continue to work at home. That model might be here to stay. I don't know, but that's the big question on the minds of leaders across the marketplace, because it's pretty consistent across the marketplace. Unless you are considered an essential employee, people in this nation have made it clear that we would love to work at home. I mean, I'm actually working longer hours because I'm here at home.
Yeah.
It's nothing for me to work from 7 to 7 because I'm right here at home. But if you have me to come to the office, I'm spending an hour plus driving on the highways because of the traffic. I'm losing valuable time. So that's the big one that we're working on right now.
Let's see how it develops. But nobody's really worried about a potential economic downturn or anything like that. Have they communicated anything like this with you?
Excuse me. I don't really think so. You know, I was looking at the stock market here in the United excuse me, in the United States this morning, and the numbers are up. The numbers are up, both for the large corporations and for the smaller businesses as well. I was looking at that this morning. I don't necessarily hear or see that it's a real big concern.
I think it was more the employment that was really going down. The numbers that I saw were something like minus 600,000 for full-time jobs were lost in the past month, I believe, and 200,000 approximately of part-time jobs were added. So you see there's a swap between full and part-time, which is not great. And I think today they're announcing the consumer price index, how this is moving. So we'll see because it's different when you're looking at the stock market at companies, right? They're going to be hit on the second wave, but first you're seeing it on the employment numbers, and then it's going to affect spending, and it's going to finally affect the stock.
Yeah, I'm looking at some data right now, even as we're talking, and the U.S. labor market for the entire year 2024 is expected to be stable and normalized now that we're beyond the pandemic. As it relates to hiring, it says that employment growth will be positive, but a little bit slower than recent years. And then as it relates to unemployment rate is expected to rise to about 4% on average throughout the entire year. And so this last month, May of 2024, the unemployment rate here in the United States increased by just a little bit, 4%, increased to 4% from 3.9% in April. So, and wages are expected to continue to be relatively cool. So it's not like it's causing too much alarm, but it's always something to pay close attention to as we go forward.
Yeah. All right. Tell us about your book. What's the latest book?
Yes. So I'm in the middle of a series right now, Leadership with a Servant's Heart. It's a nonfiction book, and it's available in print. It's available in ebook, and it's available in audio book. We're on book number 2. The first book was released in 2019. Second book was released in 2022. We'll probably be doing book 3 next year in 2025. But we focus on leadership with a servant's heart because we understand that when a leader shows up and he or she demonstrates their subject matter expertise and their intelligence and their acumen, we understand that brings instant credibility because that's an expectation. But we go beyond that and focus on the heart, because you mentioned it a little bit earlier. When it's all said and done, we have to remember that workers are people. And we have to remember the human side of leading people. So from the heart comes the respect, the honor, the care, and the value, and also the empathy and compassion that should be afforded everyone on our team and on our organization, because we have real issues that we're dealing with, real concerns, real challenges that we're dealing with day in and day out. And being a compassionate and an empathetic leader does not make you weak. It makes you human. And that's the silent piece that most people don't articulate. When a new leader shows up, more times than not, people are really, really concerned about how is this leader going to treat us. That's the what I call the silent moment, because they don't usually say it, but they're thinking it. Is this person going to listen to me? Are they going to value my opinion and my contributions or not? And when they find out that you do, it's very, very comforting to everybody on the team. But when they find out that you don't, now we have some issues we have to deal with. So leadership with a servant's heart helps all of us to understand the importance of aligning what's in the mind with what's in the heart, because we don't get much training on that in school, in formal school. We get theory and practicum and methodology, but we don't really get much training and insight on how to really treat people in a way where we can still hold them accountable, but we can also demonstrate that, you know what, we're people and we need to treat each other that way. So that's sort of an executive summary of what the books are all about.
It's a fantastic way to end this conversation as well, Kevin. Thank you so much.
Good. Thank you. Thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you.
Yes.
How can people get a hold of you? What is your website, and where can they find the book, the latest one?
Yes, absolutely. Again, the name of the company is the Johnson Leadership Group. So that's our website, www.thejohnsonleadershipgroup.com. The email address is kevin@thejohnsonleadershipgroup.com. And then all of our events, all of our activities, the team, information about the books, everything is right there. All the clients that we serve, the testimonials, our mission, vision, strategic priorities, everything is listed right there. And feel free to reach out and touch. I'd love to have an opportunity to meet you and to serve you.
Thank you for listening to Grow and Learn. We hope that you found our podcast informative, engaging, and inspiring. Our mission is to help you keep growing and learning, and we hope that our conversations and insights have provided you with practical advice and useful perspectives. If you're looking for personalized support and guidance to help you achieve your personal or professional growth objectives, I offer a range of services to help. As a trusted management partner and mentor, I work with businesses in the process of transformation, looking for new streams of business, as well as M&A. With an extensive professional network of experts and mentors, I can bring on board the right person or team based on the specific needs of the company I'm working with. To learn more about the services I offer and how I can help you achieve your goals, visit my website at grownlearn.org. You can also reach out to me via email or social media. I'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this episode of Grow and Learn, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us, and it helps us to continue to create content that is relevant and valuable to our listeners. Thanks again for listening, and we look forward to sharing more insights and perspectives with you in the future.